All right, today we're pulling back the curtain on the hidden rulebook that literally builds our world, the FIDIC contracts. You ever look at a massive skyscraper or a huge bridge and wonder how on earth it gets built across borders without just descending into total chaos? Well, you're about to find out. Let's get right into it. Just imagine this for a second. You're building a new dam, okay? You've got engineers from Germany, the money's coming from a bank in Japan, and the actual construction crew is local. Now, every single one of those groups has their own way of doing things, their own laws, their own expectations. So how do you stop a project that big from just collapsing under its own weight? That's the core problem we're talking about today.
And the answer, you guessed it, is FIDIC. You can think of it as the universal playbook for global construction. It's a standard set of contracts that gets everybody, and I mean everybody, speaking the same language. It turns what could be a recipe for disaster into a real blueprint for success.
Now look, you do not need to be a lawyer to get your head around FIDIC. You really don't. You just have to understand one golden rule, and it all boils down to a single critical question. Who is in charge of the design? See, the old way of doing things was to have a different contract for every little piece of the job. One for the civil engineering, another one for the electrical stuff, and so on. It got complicated fast. FIDIC completely flipped that on its head. It said, forget about the type of work. Let's organize everything around one question. Who is designing this thing? Is it the employer who's paying for it, or is it the contractor who's building it? Answering that one question, well, that's the secret to unlocking the entire FIDIC system. And once you really grasp that who designs is the magic question, all those famous color-coded FIDIC books suddenly make a whole lot more sense. Each color is basically a different answer to that core question. So let's do a quick tour of the books. Okay, here it is, your cheat sheet. The red, yellow, and silver books, these are the big three. In the red book, the employer is in the driver's seat when it comes to design. But with the yellow and silver books, the contractor takes the wheel. And you'll notice something really important here. The risk always follows the responsibility. The more design control the contractor has, the more risk they have to take on. That's the simple genius of it right there. So, the red book. This is your classic, traditional approach. The employer provides a totally complete design, and they hire a neutral engineer to make sure the work gets done exactly to spec. The contractor's job is pretty straightforward here. Just build what's on the page. Then we have the yellow book, and this is where the script gets flipped. Here, the employer just outlines what they need, the performance requirements, but it's the contractor who has to figure out how to design and build it. This is what's called a design-build approach, and it puts way more responsibility on the contractor's shoulders. Now, this quote really highlights what's at stake. When a huge construction project is just one piece of a much bigger, more complicated financial puzzle, there is absolutely no room for error. Any delays, any budget overruns, they can be fatal to the whole venture. And that's exactly where our next book comes in. This is the world of the silver book. It's for what are called EPC projects. That's engineering, procurement, and construction. The easiest way to think about it is as a turnkey solution. The contractor handles everything, the whole shebang, and at the end of the day, the employer just gets the keys. It is all about one thing, locking in that price and that deadline from the very beginning. So, how does it guarantee that certainty? Simple. By shifting a massive, and I mean massive amount of risk onto the contractor. Under the silver book, the contractor is on the hook for just about everything, even stuff they can't possibly predict, like what they're going to find when they start digging. And notice, the impartial engineer from the red book, gone. The employer gives up some of that day-to-day control, but in return they get what they really, really want, a fixed price and a firm deadline. Of course, not every project needs that full-scale, heavy-duty treatment. For all the smaller, more straightforward jobs, there's the green book. It's a much more stripped-down, flexible contract, designed for projects under about $500,000. It just goes to show how the FIDIC system can work for a huge range of construction projects, big and small. And it's super important to remember that FIDIC isn't some dusty old document stuck in the past. It's a living, breathing framework that is constantly evolving to keep up with the crazy, ever-changing world of global construction. And you can see that evolution right here on this timeline. It all started with that first red book way back in 1957. Then came the big overhaul in 1999, which is when we got the modern suite of contracts that really put the focus on procurement strategy. And it's still changing today, with newer additions like the DBO contract, which covers the entire life cycle of a project, from design and construction all the way through to long-term operation. And you know what came with that evolution? Simplification. A whole lot of it. The original Red Book was an absolute beast with 72 different clauses. The modern contracts, they've all been streamlined down to a standard 20-clause structure. So if you can master one of them, you're honestly well on your way to understanding them all.
But let's be real, no two projects are ever exactly the same. And that's where something called particular conditions comes into play. This is the official way you can customize a standard contract for your specific needs. But, and this is a big but, it is a powerful tool and you have to use it with care. One wrong move here, one poorly worded clause, and you could accidentally create a loophole that costs millions.
So, what's the bottom line here? After all this, why should you care about a bunch of standardized contracts? Well, the benefits are huge. When a contractor from, say, South Korea sees a project in Brazil using a FIDIC contract, they know exactly what they're getting into. There are fewer unknowns, which means they can give you a sharper, more competitive price. And when project risks are laid out that clearly, banks are way more willing to lend you the money to get the whole thing off the ground in the first place. It makes the project more bankable.
And that kind of leaves us with one final thought to chew on. A standard contract provides an amazing starting point, a solid foundation. But you have to ask yourself, is your project, is any project ever truly standard? The FIDIC framework is an incredibly powerful tool, for sure, but the real magic happens when you combine the power of that global standard with the specific wisdom of local expertise. Thanks for tuning in.